Hey y'all, how's it going? My name is Spencer Pratt. I'm a real-life real estate investor here in Dallas, Texas. And the topic of today's video, I got a fresh battery. I'm going to ramble for a little bit. And by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you guys things that these online entrepreneurs are not telling you about life and life trajectory. And this talk is going to be very advanced back-end things that are happening in life when you choose to take the path of entrepreneurship. I have chosen to take that path, and I just want to highlight some things for y'all that it took me honestly kind of years to piece together and talking to different people, but no one on the internet besides a couple people, right? I've seen this from 3 of 7 Project, from Chris Termy at First Man, and you see it kind of cyclically through the Bible as well. And first and foremost, I have to thank God for getting me to this point to even be able to have gone through these life experiences and to be in this position to be talking here. So let me get that, that's for real. There are things that happen in your life when you're doing this that, they get cut up briefly, but they get so misconstrued. And the best case examples I have of that are like Alex Hormozy and his stuff where, he'll post like, don't go home to see your family or whatever. But the truth is, I don't know if that's for the reason that you guys might think, right? The obvious reason where people say that stuff is because they just don't like the people that are there. But I think that more common the case is actually that they cannot relate with with people anymore, with normal people anymore. And that becomes the case when you kind of go so far into something and you let everything else go to the wayside that it becomes almost impossible to talk to your uncle about the NBA playoffs. I didn't even know that was going on. You know what I mean? That becomes the case. And so the rooms get smaller and smaller and smaller, and the knowledge pool gets more condensed. And this is a phenomenon that happens in society, regardless of what it is. Now, let me begin by introducing this chart that was first shown to me by a man at First Man. His name is Chris Termy. I might be getting his last name wrong, but basically he developed this chart back in the day, and what it was the growth pattern of your college grad versus the growth pattern of the entrepreneur, right? If you choose that life route. And basically, if you look at it, it's very linear, right? Every 5 years you should be trying to get this promotion or should be getting this. And it kind of stagnates though, right? It does kind of hit a certain point where your income level will get capped out. Even if you make it to C-suite, there's just not that many dudes at the C-suite level that are really crushing in more than $2 or $3 million. And that's cool. If you choose that life, that's okay. There isn't a right or a wrong choice. Now, if you choose the life path of entrepreneur, if I can get my head out the way, you can see that you're looking at an exponential growth curve, right? There is the potential for exponential growth because you are no longer, there are just so many less factors that are inhibiting your growth pattern, right? At a certain point, it could be like talent pool or access to funds, but the further you go into entrepreneurship, the more you become equipped to solve those problems. And so the better you can get at problem solving, ultimately, the better you can get at making money. Whereas in a career, you're worried about, politics, making sure that you're in good with the boss, all sorts of things. And I've watched it play out because both my parents at one point or another had corporate jobs. You know, they had the corporate jobs, and I mean that pattern. Even if you're working for the county, you know, it's this very, well, in about 5 years you get to this level, and well, this dude's been here 25 years, so that's why he's in charge. And that's okay. But you have to be cognizant of the fact that if most people are choosing that life path where they're just going to put in their 25 years and get their pension and stuff, that you will not be able to relate to them, because the sacrifices and stuff that it costs to actually be continuously problem solving and continuously growing, it costs you to give that life up. You have to die, essentially, and metaphorically, right? To be able to achieve some sort of exponential growth. And so it's just a very interesting phenomenon, and I think that it gets so misconstrued, and it's created this hustle culture as a prospect, like as a thing, and a lot of people honestly are probably absorbing Alex Hormozi content and working harder at their 9-to-5 job. Which maybe that's what he wants, because at a certain point he'll have to scale to where he needs employees. But it doesn't matter if you're grinding harder if you're not leveraging anything else. And in order to actually leverage things, you have to lose things. Right? And so that shows me, that kind of can segue into this second chart, which I was taught by a man I had met who went to prison, and this was explained to him in prison. So, if you look at this chart, right, and there's another dude that was teaching this, but basically this is the lifetime of your kind of 9-to-5 guy, right? As you can see, God, dude, I've been out of high school for too long, so I don't remember the economics terms. But you got your troughs, and then you got your high points, right? Your highs and your lows. But when you're working a job where, like, you know, every kind of 5-10 years you get promoted and you get this nice, easy 2-week check. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy, bro. There's some people just out there grinding, dude, for their 2-week check. So, whatever. You get your check, and life kind of, you know, it goes kind of easy, right? Not easy in the sense that you're not working, but like, it's predictable. You're going to get that 2-week check every other 2 weeks. And so you don't really experience these big swings of up and down, right? And so that leads me to this other quote by Mark Twain, right? Mark Twain said that most men die at 27, and we bury them at 72. Now, the manosphere community seems to misconstrue this quote to believe that, you know, that's because that's the average age when men get married and have kids and stuff. I believe that it's different, that there's a different reasoning there, and I'll try and tie it back into the whole thing. I believe that the actual thing behind that is the age when most men are, you know, or most people, right? We'll keep it gender fluid here or whatever. That's the age when most people are capable of just carrying that burden, and they're capable of mortgaging a house and this or that. But they've reached that point in their, you know, in their 9-to-5 career. However, the time that it takes to kind of just, after that point, you're just kind of putting in a time clock, and you're going on just being there for a longer amount of time. The learning is so slow. You have to learn things so slow. And so mentally, I believe that is what makes the man, you know, the metaphorical man die. Because he is no longer mentally stimulated, and so he just kind of reaches to a point where he cashes his check, pays his bills, drinks the beer, and relaxes on the couch and makes sure that, you know, football game's on Sunday. And like, I live in Texas, bro. I know what this is. Like, I have seen it. I have been around it my whole life. That is how people are brought up. Where, you know, like basically, bro, I have, and it doesn't matter whether or not, okay, so I am from a community where there is like a 90% attrition rate from high schooler students to go to college, right? That means that 90% of the students are going to graduate high school and go off to a college. But it doesn't matter whether they go to college or whether they go and just, I've been in communities where all the people, you know, they graduate high school and they go get a job working for the plant, or they get a job working as a county lineman or something like that. It doesn't matter. Whether you go to college or not, the growth learning thing, that they stop doing it after college because they get their certification or whatever, or they get their certification, so they stop learning. Or they learn really, really slowly over time because it doesn't matter how fast I learn this because I get no reward for learning this faster. There is no reward for learning how to do whatever it is faster if you have to do something for 10 years to get promoted. So you just stop. And so what that produces is people that, honestly, bro, they don't really change since high school or after college. They go, they hang out with their girlfriend, they cash their check, they hang out with their buddies and drink some beers, and they go watch the football game. There is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. But in entrepreneurship, that person has to die. That is no longer an option. And I'm not saying like you can't enjoy life. That gets so misconstrued. But the truth is you have to, now that it's all on you, you have to actually really recognize opportunity costs. And that with each one of those things, the girlfriend or the wife or the truck payment and the car and the house and the playing games and watching football with your boys, all of that has this opportunity cost of you learning. And when you are rewarded for learning, you should be learning more. And so that is why you can experience exponential growth when you are rewarded for what you learn, versus when you stop learning and you just earn. And Alex Hormozi hits on this when he says, you know, you should stop trying to earn and start trying to learn, right? But they don't explain it further down into it. No one does this because it's not sexy and it doesn't clip that well. But it is the truth. It's not this grind hard hustle culture that's the reason. It's because in entrepreneurship, you actually get paid to learn more. In a corporate job, you do not. You get paid to go BS around with the boss and to make sure that he's happy. And to make sure that whoever's below you is working harder so that way you can brag about your top numbers to the guy above you. That's how it goes in those companies, at least in the West. You know, I'm not going to get into Toyota Kata and how that's actually a way better way to structure a company. But that's how it goes, guys. Like, no one explains this. No one explains this, but it's how it goes. And so now I'm going to get into the flip side of that chart that the man that had gone to prison showed me. And I remember where I was, dude. I was like 19 years old, and we had all met up at his house to kind of hang out. And he drew this out for us, and I was like, dang, man, that's actually really good. And I remember it. I had seen it before, but it stuck with me that time. So here's the flip side of it. And it looks like this. It just has bigger peaks and way bigger troughs, right? It's kind of hard to see that on the full screen. So the reason that it has this is the bigger peaks and the bigger troughs is because now in entrepreneurship, since you are playing, well, okay, remember the bigger peaks, bigger troughs. I'm going to write that down so that way when we talk about infinite game theory, you guys, I'll be able to tie it all back together. So bigger peaks, bigger troughs, continual investment. Hold on. Continual investment. Okay. So When I was about 18 or 19, I had gotten so sucked into the red pill thing, man. Like, I really did. And so you begin obsessing over like looks, money, status, and then you begin thinking about like gamifying life, right? That like there's certain levels to everything, and there kind of are. Okay, there are when you're playing a finite game, and that a finite game being, okay, a great example of it is kind of like living your life like okay, so we'll take plumbers, right? Plumbers is a very easy example of this, right? When you are a beginner plumber, you are an apprentice, and that is your first stepping stone. You get paid jack for what you do, and you kind of get walked on. Okay? Then after about 4 years, you become a journeyman. And you get paid more. You can kind of start having a nicer life, and you might be able to get that new truck on finance and buy a house. Okay, now after 10 years, you are now considered a master plumber. This is when you can either start your own business or be one of the highest paid plumbers around. All right, you can make $200,000 to $300,000. And so in this, you can kind of see a natural stepping stone to life, right? This, though, is the stepping stone of a finite game where you have to put certain amounts of time into something to get a reward. Where you are not really being rewarded for learning all the things of a master plumber until you put 10 years in. It doesn't matter. You still have to have the hours. You have to have the hours. So this is a finite game, and it has finite rewards, which means it has finite levels. So, for instance, you get to achieve XYZ level of life when you're a journeyman, and you get to achieve XYZ level of life when you're a master plumber, because you have played a finite game. So, now introduce the concept of the infinite game, which is entrepreneurship. And that is why Alex Hormozi will say, the only way you lose is if you quit. Because it is. That is infinite game theory. And I did research into this after it was Simon Sinek. Yeah, Simon Sinek is the one who wrote about infinite games. And Alex Hormozi saw him, so I watched him. Simon Sinek. And entrepreneurship is an infinite game, which means that yes, if you are playing entrepreneurship not wisely, you can basically, so there's a subsect of entrepreneurs that will trade hours for dollars still. They just are doing it, but now they're their own boss, right? So an example of that is if you own your own septic company. And but you don't scale or anything, right? You own your own septic company. You're not going to scale it. You're making $200,000 to $300,000 a year, but now you're your own boss. And so you have effectively reached an area of society, of lifestyle, right, that you're comfortable with. You've reached that. However, infinite game theory would argue that you should not do that and continuously reinvest into it. So you're actually, in the true infinite game theory, you, the person, is not going anywhere. Your lifestyle should not really change or grow or anything, because the more that your lifestyle grows, the less that you are growing around until a necessary point in time. So that is why when we show the chart of the bigger peaks and bigger troughs, you are seeing the cycles of continuous investment. I know this to actually be true. There was a point when I was working for my dad and I had not gone out on my own yet. I was making good money and I was closing, or I wasn't closing, I was door knocking and we were doing deals, right? And I was making good money. I had my truck. Things were good. I had this nice diesel truck. I had reached a level of societal status that was cool or whatever, But going out on my own, I had to forego all of that. I had to sell my truck and buy a $4,000 Volkswagen Golf that had 300,000 miles and ran on diesel so I could keep my company going, so I could continue playing the game. Then from there, when the car broke, I was finally able to sell my truck. I sold the car when the car broke, and I was able to buy my Camry. So I'm playing the infinite game, but constantly reinvesting, and that's why you see things get better, because I am getting better at the game. The organization is getting better, not me not me. I'm not getting better, right? So with a company, like when you work for a company, you are building yourself, right? You are building yourself, your status off of the company money, off of their money. When you are building the company, you are building the company and not yourself. Yourself goes goes away as you build the company, and as the company gets better, you get to live a better life. If you're living, if you and the company are one, if you are truly playing the infinite game. You see this though, throughout time. Like, you look at doctors and people, and they look down on everyone else, but the reality of it is most of them are broke. Most doctors are broke. They're debted to the gills. They spend all their money on lifestyle because they believe that since they are a title of a doctor that they must have XYZ lifestyle, and they're broke. You see this time and time again when you watch Dave Ramsey. And so you can understand it. But no one talks about the other side. Maybe because fewer people go through it. Maybe because it's ugly to talk about. Maybe because it makes people think about society a little bit and how much worth that they put in all the things. A lot of people don't have to actually buy the stuff until they're ready to start selling things, so that way people believe that this works. A lot of it is that. It's even true with this channel, right? Like, in the beginning, I was using my iPhone. I could have given the same talk on my iPhone, and it wouldn't have been in 4K. But now I can do it in 4K, and people believe it a little bit more. And then if I got more lights, people would believe it a little bit more. But you see, that is actually a product of me getting better at the game and the company getting better. It's not a product of actual money. I'm doing my best to articulate this the best way I can. It's one of those things that it's clicked for me, but it hasn't 100% clicked for me to teach yet. But I think that it is just these things are incredibly important that people understand, and that the earlier you can understand it, the better. Because truth be told, man, it's honestly, once you go through this, you will never look at life or society or any of it the same. And then when you learn about what marketing and copywriting is, you'll never look at anything the same again. But yeah, man, it's not there's not a right or a wrong answer, really. It's just choosing, do you want to play a finite or an infinite game? And then if you choose to play the infinite game, just really know that it's going to come with a lot of weird things. It's a wild ride, man. It's a weird thing. The infinite game is one that will boggle you, will challenge your faith, will challenge your beliefs. And it's a game that no one else will truly understand unless they're playing it themselves. And that is why there is such a discrepancy in society between the people who really have money and top level earner at job. That's why there is a mile between those people. It's not because of actual intellect or ability or any of this. It's because some people are they're playing different games. That's why there is a 1% in society and there's a 99%. I think that that's my ultimate conclusion of trying to like make sense of society and why things are this way or that way. I mean, I've been fascinated with it since I was a kid. But truly, I believe it is just that. It is that people are playing different games. And so maybe this video reaches you and you decide, God, dude, I don't know what the hell this dude's talking about. I don't want to play his game. I'm going to stick to a finite game. I think you should. I think you should. It would be okay. Like, that's the other thing. Don't watch these dudes that are playing a different game than you and try and play it by their rules. You don't need to play finite game by infinite game rules. You'll work yourself to death and you'll hate your life. You will. You will be one of those dudes. There's a subsect of the population, and maybe this is the C-suite population, that plays the finite game. They play the finite game by infinite game rules. And so they're miserable because, I mean, the only way that you could probably do that is by traveling 278 days out of the year and doing all that because you think that grinding is going to make it better. And yeah, you're a high-level grinder. But how do you have done that for yourself? That's why, look at Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos did it. Right? He had like a $250,000 a year job. He left it to start Amazon. He stopped playing an infinite game. Well, maybe he just put down the finite game to play the infinite game. Maybe he did that. I don't know him that well. But I hope you guys can, I hope you can take something away from this. Or maybe it'll look like on a camera and I've just completely lost my mind. But it makes enough sense to me. I hope it can make some sense to you. I just felt compelled to film this one because there's just so much stuff out there. And look, I know my audience is small right now, but I just hope that it reaches the right person maybe. And so I'm going to leave it off at that. If you guys got any sort of value from this, subscribe. Thanks. I'll see y'all.